Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast, where we do interviews with interesting, inspiring women like our friend Chanté here to help our listeners find the resources, tools, and support they need to be their best inspired selves. How are you doing today, Chanté?
I'm doing lovely. Definitely can't complain. I just enjoying life, taking everything one day at a time. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. We actually talked a little bit before this, and I was commenting, I have sunshine in Milwaukee, so I'm feeling pretty good. And she has lovely orchids in the background, which some of you can see and others can't. So, Shantae, would you just be kind enough to take a moment to tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. Well, I love to start out by saying I am a wife and a mom. I've been married coming up on 15 years and just enjoying the journey of marriage, right? Where we learn the ups, the downs. But I guess when I think about being married, the beautiful thing is it truly does bring out the best in me, the best in my husband, just learning each other, constantly growing. Married, and we have two children, and they keep us busy. They're 8 and 10. So just enjoying life as it is today. And I start there because that hasn't always been, the case. And I didn't even think it was an option, and you'll understand why in a moment. That's my current situation, and just I have a nonprofit. So through my nonprofit, you'll get to hear more about that also momentarily. But that keeps me busy as well, just reaching out to help women heal and stay at home mom, just juggling things that we do as women, but I cannot complain. I truly am very grateful and blessed to uh, enjoy life as it is now. As I mentioned, it hasn't always been this way. The smile, the joy hasn't always been there. I had a life where growing up, and everybody starts there. What was life like growing up? And for me, it was generally good. Grew up in a home where to this day, my siblings, my sister and brother and I, we say no matter what, the good, bad, and the ugly, we always felt love in our home. There was so much love there, and we never felt like mom and dad, they don't love us, or we messed up and now they just hate us. We felt so much love, and I'm so grateful to the love that I experienced in my home. But on the contrary, outside of my home, there were incidents that did not display anything near what love should. I had incidents as a young girl, younger than 8 years old, experiencing sexual trauma. And I feel like I've been given, and I chuckle when I say it, but it's like this gift of transparency. And I think it's because I lived in a place of shame for so long that when I came out of that place, I realized how damaging it was. And literally, I'm like, I could not bear to witness someone else going through that season of shame or guilt and just hiding in a cave because of their, traumatic experiences. With that being said, I share very transparently my story and the experiences that I've had. So, as a young girl, I had incidents two that I remember clearly. One being forced to participate in inappropriate sexual activity, the other being fondled, being touched inappropriately. So, these are incidents that happen, and as you can imagine, changed my perspective on a lot of things in life. It changed my perspective about myself. A lot of the areas that I struggled with for years and years and years was self-esteem and being a people pleaser. Those labels were like on my shoulders, and they did not dissipate until I had to acknowledge it and work through it. But those were my younger years where my parents loved me. We grew up in church, going to church, learning about God, and it was great because obviously for me, I confidently look back and say I feel like that is what sustained me in more ways than one. Being able to know that in the midst of things that happened that I didn't quite understand, I knew that my home was a safe place. And I knew that my church was a safe place. But sadly, it did not take away what I was struggling with as a young girl. And I must also say this before I forget. To this day, my mom will say, you know, growing up, I remember saying to you and your siblings, if anything ever happens, you know, like, let me know, I'll believe you. And I was like, Mom, I don't remember you saying that. You know, I don't doubt that you did, but I just don't remember. And I put that out there because, again, coming from a family that it's just so much love there, I can imagine we hear these stories and the questions start flowing like, well, what about this? And who was around? And why didn't you say anything? But again, at that time, in that place as a young girl, where you're either told you're going to get in trouble if you say anything, and you know, you're just literally told to shush, to be quiet. And if you can imagine your younger self, number one, we believe anything older people tell us. And that is where I was as a young girl. I believed if I say something, I will get in trouble. And I didn't say anything. So I went years being a people pleaser. And here's the thing, I am an avid journaler. I still have journal entries from the 8-year-old Chante. And I have so many journals on my bookshelf or loose pieces of paper. And so when I go back and look at journal entries or even poems that I've read as a young girl, I'm like, she was in distress. Like, oh my gosh, what was I talking about? But as a young girl, I felt lost. Where am I? Who am I? Will I ever be free? And it was my way of expressing what I was internalizing, what I did not feel comfortable sharing with anyone. So I go through these years of being a people pleaser, and sadly that manifests in a number of ways, being the yes person, sure, okay, and not understanding that line between yes, I'm here to serve and enhance and be a blessing, versus yes, it's detrimental to me, it's not healthy for me, but because I don't want, for the lack of a better term, to experience any confrontation or rebuttal or weird, abnormal consequences, I will agree to. Or there were times where I just found myself as a young lady longing in a very unhealthy way for the attention of a male. And on so many levels, one would think, how does that even manifest? It's especially in my case where my dad, like, I am the youngest of 3, and I will proudly say I'm a daddy's girl. Like, I love my daddy, my daddy loves me. And even so, I felt those, the insecurities of feeling inadequate and longing for this attention from a guy to say that he liked me. But there was just a lot of issues growing up mentally, and a lot of, again, that low self-esteem was a big deal for me. So I go through, gosh, high school, college, you know, the best as I can. And it all, I say, blew up when I was raped as an adult. That is when it, like, the entire course of my life changed. So you get a young girl who's violated as a child. She does her best to work through that. She pushes it away, not talking about it. I can manage, I can cope. I'm an adult now. And sadly, I was in a relationship with someone who there was an initial attraction. There was intercourse. And then it got to the point where I realized this is not healthy. If I call myself a Christian, if I'm supposed to be like a follower of Christ, then I really have to make sure that I'm walking that out. So I tell this individual, yeah, we got to cut this, not happening. This is, you know, I'm going against my own morals. You know, I'm going against some of the things that I've committed myself to. And at that time, it was understood, it was respected. And this was a person where we had mutual friends. So after this conversation, when I would see this individual, it was like, oh, they respect me. You know, let's be real, ladies. You know, there are times when we can put our foot down and draw the line, and we are talked about, right? Something said about us. I can't believe you don't want to continue in this relationship and you're shamed for that. I didn't feel that from this individual at all. And I'm putting these specifics here because what I've learned through the work that I do, a lot of the shame and the guilt comes from the details that we think are so abnormal and exclusive to our issues, we're shamed, and then we never heal because we're like, that part I can't talk about, that part I can't deal with. Well, I hope I'm not the only person, but I am one of the ones that will say that part is significant, and that part shouldn't carry any guilt or shame if that's where you were at that time. So with that being said, this individual, and I always preface it, he was a massage therapist. I give those details, and it does open a can of worms sometimes because, again, we're human. And look, I've heard the worst. So some part of me has, been made of steel to be okay with, the rebuttal or the questions that come with this. But again, I don't mind sharing my story because I can only imagine all the others out there who I've already talked to personally. I may never meet, but I know how it is. So here it is. This person was a massage therapist, and I had sessions with this individual, professional sessions, didn't feel threatened by him. So months later, after I made my change and I'm, renewing my mind and on this right path, I came into this season, and these are those moments where you look back and you're like, man, that decision changed the course of my life. I had a work project that was planning for an event, a lot of stress, a lot of planning, a lot of work hours. And I remember telling myself this day, I need to go to a chiropractor or a massage therapist because my body physically, I am beat. I have back problems, I am beat. Well, Chante decides she's going to save money. I'm going to call my friend and schedule an appointment and get a discount, this is someone I know, I trust. I've never felt threatened by this person in my life. Well, I make the appointment, and I say what started out professional became unprofessional very quickly. I would never forget when the tides turned. He had this massage therapist set up in a home, and he dismissed himself so I could prepare. And once he re-entered to start the session, it started out normal. And very quickly, the tides turned. And I remember thinking, is he touching me inappropriately? Like in my mind, like, no, he knows better. No, he's not like that. Yes, I know what's happened in our past, but there has never been any level of discomfort or, anything like that. So no, that's not happening. So I'm literally already trying to talk myself out of this. And he pursues, and there's now like altercation and me verbally doing what I could do, saying what I could say to stop this from happening. And it didn't work. And so here I am, literally in this toil, like, what is going on here? And I'll never forget when he, quote unquote, finished. I felt stale, stuck, and paralyzed. And interesting enough, he asked this question that threw me off. He says, "Do you want to continue?" And I thought, is he really like saying this to me? And so I just remember sitting there in disbelief, and he touched my shoulder. And at that time, I was just like, I'm going to continue with whatever he's talking about because I need this to be okay. So he tries to console me. And I just remember this yucky, I felt dirty, disgusted. But in my mind, like my brain was like, whatever it takes to be able to leave this situation and be okay, whatever it takes. And so at that time, he began to attempt a massage that wasn't working out. So he's trying to console me, and then he starts to caress me, and it got to the point where I laid, I didn't fight, I didn't say a word. I laid, and I turned my head to the side, and I looked to my left, and I just laid there. And I thought, whatever he thinks next is, just do it, because I want to categorize what just happened as sex. I want to go home, and I want to forget about this. And I'm having this conversation in my mind as he engages in intercourse again, and I didn't fight back. I said to myself, I'm going to be okay. And I remembered my childhood. I've been through some things before, and I will get through this. And so that day, literally at that time, in that moment, I said, I'm going to be okay. This is just sex. And I left that environment. I was wounded, clearly. I was traumatized, clearly. But I left that environment convincing myself that I was okay. I go home, I take a shower. Mind you, the moment I get in my car, I lose it. I am crying. I am like literally, I felt like I lost my mind. Again, you're good. You've been through some things, Chanté, and you're going to be okay. I go home, I take a shower because I want to feel clean. I want to feel like I'm getting all of that yucky stuff off of me and I'm cleansed now. And I literally do my best to go about my life as if nothing ever happened. I go to work attempting, nothing happened. At the time, I lived with my parents and my sister, going about every day as if nothing ever happened. And then one day, I was sick. I didn't know why I was sick. I was sick. And I said to my mom, I don't feel good. And at that time, we had Kaiser, and they have it set up where they have advice nurses available around the clock. So that was like always the house go-to. You don't feel good, call the Kaiser nurse, whatever, they'll give you instructions. And I called Kaiser, and I gave the symptoms. And I'm 24 at the time. So you can get an idea of, I'm mature enough to, make my own decisions, et cetera. I'm 24 at the time. So I'm talking to the nurse, and she's asking me my symptoms, and I'm telling her, just to me, normal, no connection of anything, just letting her know how I feel. And she says, well, ma'am, you either have the stomach flu or you're pregnant. When was the last time you had intercourse? And I froze. I'm like, and I froze, and all I could hear, I could say this to her very faintly. I told him no. I told him no. And she's like, ma'am, what? I can't hear you. And I said, I told him no. So mandated reporter, she gets the police on the phone, and I'm like giving more details of what happened that day. And immediately I'm literally forced to deal with what I tried to bury about a month or so ago. So my world turns around all over, upside down again, where police are at my home, ambulance are at my home, and then I have to tell my parents, this is what happened to me. This is why the police are here. So that night, trauma all over again. Police report, drive by the location it happened, ducking in a police car, pointing it out, and then having to be at the hospital for them to confirm that I am now pregnant. Now I'm carrying a child from a horrific trauma, and I was a mess. Can't sugarcoat that. I was a mess. Back to my family. Gosh. Both of my parents were in that hospital room, and I was crying. I was so hurt and broken, and I can imagine they were also hurt and broken, yet they stood strong for me, and they held me, and they ensured me that everything was going to be okay. Everything was going to be okay. So, gosh, there wasn't like a turnaround the next day. I went through this season of feeling just lost and empty and depressed. And my mom was like, could you just smile? And I would look at her like, why would I want to smile? There's nothing to smile about, Mom. And then things changed. I had a moment of anger, frustration, but the anger and the frustration that I felt was, I don't like the way I feel. This darkness and depression, I don't like it. And I cannot stay in this space. And I cried out to God. I knew that even though I had a lot of questions, let's just be real, but I still knew that he was God, my God. And I hadn't talked to him in a while, but I knew he was still there. So I was like, God, I need you. I don't have a prayer to pray. I don't have anything good to say right now, but I know that I need you. And I felt his love and his voice and his strength in my heart. And that was my that was my moment where I felt like, and I have a book and I'll talk about that as well, but in my book, I say that's where I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I still had to go through it, but it wasn't dark. I wasn't alone. And I had the Spirit of God leading me and guiding me. So shortly after that, I actually went through the healing process. I had a rape crisis counselor. I had a psychologist, and I went through that process. It didn't always feel good, and I didn't always want to, okay, let's talk, but I knew I needed to. And here's the beautiful thing. I actually knew that the Chante that had dreams and goals, she was still in there, right? I didn't know how we were going to, manifest her, but I knew she was in there. So as I'm going through my healing process, I actually felt this urge to help other women. And I was like, wait, hold on. I'm still trying to get through this myself, but I couldn't shake it. So eventually I became a rape crisis counselor, and I began helping women heal from sexual assault. And that was so empowering for me because I felt like I was fighting for them. Again, as I said earlier, I knew what it felt like. My situation may not have mirrored theirs, but I knew the pain from that type of trauma. And I felt like every time I met with them, whether it was in person at the hospital or on the phone on their hotline or in person with a one-on-one conversation, I fought for them. I'm like, we are in this together. And I personally feel that helping them, in addition to having a tight-knit, I'll put emphasis on that, a tight-knit of support. I had a circle of family and friends. Literally, I am in the center and they are surrounding me, supporting me and guarding me and keeping me, protected from any other mean people or mean words. But that was my process, where I'm so thankful that I had a tribe that stood there with me. And I also literally put myself out there to help other people. That is how my life transformed. My book, I mentioned. Whew.
Yeah,
Now
I'll give
remember
you a
this.
moment.
Yeah.
That was
Because
amazing.
this is like everything that happened. When I look back, I'm like, I don't even know how, like, I have what I have and how I do what I do. I just say, thank you, God, because you have equipped me, you have helped me, and here I am. I remember when I felt like I was supposed to write a book, and I was like, I don't know about that. This was before I was free in my transparency. I had already, let me back up. I had already started my nonprofit organization. So let me put that out there first. But it's a whole other level when you're like putting something in a book, right? A book? Wait a minute. I don't know about that. I'm okay behind the scenes helping women heal. I'm okay, teaching a small group of ladies or hosting a support group. But a book, to me, that's the next level. But I did it. And I'm not going to talk in detail about the book, but I mentioned the book because I want you to know the title of the book. It's My Lemonade Recipe, Turning Life's Sour Experiences into Something Sweet. And I want to build on that just very quickly, because sometimes I can imagine we think about all of the traumatic experiences we've had, and we're like, there's nothing sweet that can come out of that one. Maybe something sweet could come out of this one over here, but that one, no, not even. But I would like to hopefully encourage you to know that something sweet can come out of everything that you go through. It truly is a matter of your perspective. Like, do I look back and dare to rejoice and smile about the fact that I was violated sexually? Absolutely not. But I do rejoice in the fact that something that could have killed me internally or even physically through suicide or something else, I just know that what could have destroyed me didn't. And I chose to change my perspective and literally say, that act was not good, but what good could come from it? Well, when I look at my life, I became empathetic for people who experience trauma, any type of trauma, not just sexual assault, any type of emotional wound. And I rejoice because it allowed me to hone in on my purpose. Growing up, I've always had a heart to help people. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian until I saw animals deeply wounded and I realized I can't stomach this. So, gonna have to cross that off the list. I love the animals, I care for them, but I could not stomach the yucky stuff, the blood and the guts. But I've always had a heart to want to help people. I've been drawn to like the psychology classes in high school and the sociology classes in high school. And so now it's just catered to a specific group of people. So in some way, it kind of fine-tuned my passion. And let's also pick up from where I left off. I became pregnant. What about that? That was a whole nother part of my story that I was like, I don't even know how to deal with this. I just want to heal from the trauma of being sexually violated. But now there's something growing inside of me. What do I do? What did I do? I didn't make a decision right away. I actually wanted someone to tell me what to do. Somebody please just make this decision for me. But I knew my dad actually gave me insight on that. He said, you know, we can't make this decision for you. And perhaps actually, you know, there'll be pros and cons either way. Whatever decision you make, there'll be pros and cons. So I had a season where I felt like I could be the best mom ever. And then I had seasons where I felt like there was absolutely no way I could go through this. I'm going to have an abortion. I just can't, and I won't. And then I had seasons of, well, there's this thing called adoption. Maybe that's an option. So one day I actually thought I had made up my mind, and I shared with my family that I was going to have an abortion. And I just said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going through enough. I'm going to have an abortion. And then my dad, he says to me in the most amazing and loving way, he says, well, Chante, you know, would you ever consider just a thought if you gave birth and perhaps allowed the child to be adopted? Or maybe by that time you would feel like you would raise the child. Just have you ever thought about that? And then even become an inspiration for somebody else down the line. And I remember sitting, we were all in the kitchen, and I thought, maybe I'll think about it. We'll see. So I gave myself some more time to really think and even do, you know, the research. I'm Googling a lot of stuff, and I met with an adoption social worker, and, you know, I'm trying my best to be well informed, okay? And there was another moment. I was at work. I worked for the YMCA at the time, and I have to shout out the YMCA and the YWCA. I received my rape crisis counseling through YWCA, and I worked for the YMCA at the time. And it was just the healthiest environment I could have ever been in during that season of my life. So much support. And so I'm at work in a cubicle, and it was a light bulb moment. And I said, this child's going to be adopted. And I knew it, and I felt it. And from that moment on, I had never wavered or thought twice about it. So I went through the pregnancy, which wasn't easy, but I went through it. And the day I knew she would be adopted was when I started talking. And hey, we're in this together. So I'm going to be strong for you, and I need you to be strong for me. Like, I'm talking to my tummy. Like, we were like this. And I went through this journey of doing my best to love on this unborn child, doing my best to continue to work on myself and heal from rape. And this child was born early. And mind you, it's an open adoption. So we've been in contact with the family, and they were off away, and I'm like, okay, the child is born, what do I do? And it was such a moment of healing in a way that I never thought I needed. So the child is born early, and let me just say, that moment of her being born early, oh my gosh, it was miraculous. So one may think, oh gosh, she's probably not going to, follow through with the adoption, and oh my goodness, things are changing and it's not going according to plan. But here's the deal. I was able to spend days, I was in the hospital. All the nurses knew of my story, and they actually allowed me to stay in a special ward to have an extended stay at the hospital. So she's a preemie, and I knew that my breast milk, those nutrients would be healthy, so I began to pump milk. And something shifted for me. It was a love that had developed inside of me that I can't even explain, where I'm nurturing this child who I'm soon to release to a family with nutrients. And not nursing, pumping milk. And I knew not to nurse. That was like wisdom. I didn't want to get too attached. I wanted to be as realistic, as possible. So I'm pumping milk. And I am allowed to hold her and feed her. And I remember I would sing to her and talk to her and pray over her. And I always say that was my way of releasing her to her family in love. And to this day, my gosh, I can't even explain how beautiful everything is, where everybody knows everybody. She knows her story. My kids know about her. They know everything. They know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let me back up to the beginning, marriage. Yes, marriage. I didn't think marriage was on the radar for me. I'm like, I am damaged. There's no way. But my husband, my gosh, as many would say, my knight in shining armor, he was in my life before the trauma. He was in my life. He was right there by my side once he was made aware of what happened to me. I had developed a very close relationship with him even before all this happened. We had a relationship before all this happened. And when we reconciled and reunited, he showed the utmost level of support. And you'll get all those details in the book. But that's my life. And I'm looking back like, oh my gosh, you talk about a mess becoming a message and all of that. I'm like, whoo. So I look back and reflect on all of that I have gone through. And again, I got to that moment in my life where I felt like I can't keep all of this in. Who can I help? Who can I help cross over to the other side? That's my mission. That's my life. I help people cross over to the other side. My nonprofit organization is Earnest Love, and our tagline is Heal, Love, Live. The goal is to help women heal emotionally, love earnestly, and live freely. I call that my formula. That's my personal formula. That's how I got to where I am today. I had to acknowledge my pain so that my wounded emotions could heal. And then I had to love earnestly by receiving love. In my case, it was receiving God's love for me. It was me learning how to love myself. And in return, I was able to love other people. And now I live life free. I don't live it perfect, but I live it free because I really do my best to plug that formula into every situation, every area of my life. How do I heal, love, live from this? And sometimes it takes a lot of work and sometimes it doesn't. But it helps me to feel empowered and liberated and not trapped by any negativity that comes my way in this thing called life.
Wow, that's a powerful story. So now you have the nonprofit where you're helping women, and you've written a book, and that's helping other women. If Who would be the ideal person that you are working with, and how can they find you if they need to heal through
Yes.
something?
Well, right now, Earnest Love, we've expanded our platform to help all women heal from any emotional wound. And I hold classes online. I previously held them in person, but due to schedule changes, I began to hold them online. And if you visit earnestlove.org, you'll see if we're not currently in a session, you can always reach out via email or call, and I can give you additional information on how you can receive support, or you can receive an update on the next class. But we offer, and they're live. I teach just like I'm talking to you right now, and I teach these classes online to help women heal from emotional trauma. And literally all women, all ages, because we all go through things, and it's so important that we're healed emotionally so we can function properly. Chanté Dent, the person, I also have an LLC where that's where I'm shifting more of my focus to help women heal specifically from sexual trauma. That's always going to be near and dear to my heart. And so I don't leave anyone out under the umbrella of Earnest Love. All are welcome. But in terms of like that specific sexual assault, that's where I do make myself available, in the terms and all of that is what I would cover, one-on-one conversations. But I am available to just assist women through their healing process. I say, and I chuckle, I'm not a psychologist. I say I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a therapist, but I'm a friend here to help you heal, love, and live again.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Chante. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
story.
you.
And I would say one of the things that I've seen in my life too, and unfortunately, because I
Mhm.
am around a lot of women, is there are so many of these types of
Mhm.
stories.
Yeah.
But a lot of people haven't found
Mhm.
that freedom yet of transparency.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
if we don't talk about it, we keep bringing it about, right? If we don't tell people the little details, they think that those little details don't matter. And so thank
Yeah.
you for being brave enough
Mhm.
to make it through all of that
Yeah.
so that other women
Mhm.
can share or can find healing in some way. So we will have all of your wonderful details in the show notes, your websites, your nonprofit, your book links. And thank you so very much for spending some time with us today. Any parting
Yeah.
words you'd like to offer up to the audience before we go?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. And lastly, I would just share or encourage each individual to be okay with where you are and to be okay with your story and not to ever feel pressured that you have to share anything with anyone. Sometimes your therapy is you and your journal or you and your conversations with God, you and your prayer time. And I just want to encourage people to be patient with themselves. Sometimes we want everything to just go away tomorrow. And then unless we experience a miracle, I don't doubt miracles, I believe in them. But if we don't, we have to also be okay with that process and just be comfortable and confident with where you are and not to allow anyone to shame you or to blame you. Well, why did you do that? Or why didn't you do that? My bold and confident answer is I did what I needed to do in order to survive in that moment, whether it's rational or not. And I'm okay with that. And so I just want you to be okay with what you did or what you did not do. And don't allow that to hinder your healing. I always tell people there are treasures inside of you, and those treasures may be buried. So I encourage you to begin that healing journey or continue that healing journey. I love this logo. So you can press play again in your life and continue to move forward and experience healing so that you can enjoy life for yourself.
Oh, thank you, Shante. I look forward to staying in touch, and as other programs develop, let us know. We'll be happy to share them out with our audience because part of being your best inspired self is being your best healed self as well. So thank you
Absolutely.
again. I look forward to chatting again sometime in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, bye-bye.